Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to implement artificial intelligence in VBA and Excel. You no longer need to label data or train models, just use your favorite LLM like GPT and start playing with it. In this video, I will categorize an incoming document, extract key data points, and store everything in Excel. You can find all the relevant links in the description below. Let's open our Excel. Create a new workbook and look for our developer tab in the ribbon. Now, if you haven't found the developer tab or just not available to you, go to File, click Options, go to Customize Ribbon, and then on the right you should be able to tick it on and off. So once you have your developer tab, go to Visual Basic. This will open your Visual Basic editor, which is, compared to VS Code, a terrible editor, but sometimes you just don't have any other option. Next, click in this screen on the left, go to Insert and Module, and now we're able to write some code. But before we do so, we should install our OCR tool, which again, just like in the other video, will be Tesseract. Now, feel free to use any other OCR tool, but this one is just free and easily downloadable. Let's go to the Tesseract GitHub. I'm using Tesseract at UB Mannheim, and here you can find the executable for Tesseract for Windows. Once you've installed Tesseract, set its path in your system's environment variables to ensure it works correctly. Open your Windows and search for environment variables. Go to environment variables once more, and in the second screen in system variables you can click new, write Tesseract and the path to your Tesseract. You will see I already have this one here. Click OK. Next, in your project folder structure, we will create two new folders. First one is input, second one is output. The Excel file that we've created, we will save it in the same location as our project folder. Go to File, Save As, Browse, Project Folder, and give it some name, VBA IDP GPT. Make sure to make the file an XLSM or XLSB. So now we have the input folder, output folder, and a file where we can write our code. We also still need a file where we can provide our expected structure of the data. Both the code and this file with the structure, let's go through the Elpshire GitHub, to repositories, and look for the AI Agentic IDP VBA. Extraction schema. This, you feel free to change it as you please. This is just for test purpose. We'll create a new file and let's give it the same name. Let's copy paste it. So a bit of explanation already before we go into the code. The goal of this file is whenever a document comes in the input folder, the script will first ask GPT, is it an invoice, receipt, or contract? Now, if you add more options to it, it will just add it in the list of options to GPT. Next, if GPT says it's an invoice, then it will ask GPT, please extract these invoice elements. Similarly, if you say it's a contract, it will ask, please provide me these elements from the contract. Now let's go and take the code of the main project. In our module, we will again just copy paste everything from the create idp.vbs. I'm also using here the path to the executable of Tesseract, so if your Tesseract is installed in different location, then do please update it. And finally, before we do a code walkthrough, make sure you have the following two sheets in your workbook. First one is called File, second is called Secrets. And the way I've set it up is in the secrets. I have here GPT API key. Column B, I will write my key, and then I'm going to hide the column, just to avoid that I accidentally show it later on. Just close your eyes a moment. I will put in the key now. Alright, now that's done. Let's have a look at the code. While in the Python script everything starts at the bottom, here we'll start at the top. As mentioned before, make sure to set your tesseract location correctly. You need to provide the path to the executable. The process documents is the main process where we'll root through all documents in the input folder. Clean workbook will delete some information from the workbook from previous runs. Here we will delete some working files that we have. Here we're starting to loop through all the files in input folder. First thing we do is we check, do we know this file type? If you go to this function, you will see there is no PDF. While PDF was included in the Python project, it's not here, because in Python it's fairly easy to just use a separate package and extract the data from the PDF. While in VBA it is possible, but you would need some extra tools to make it happen. If you are interested in having an option where also PDFs can be handled, then please let me know in the comments. Next, we start with an OCR, followed by a categorization, and in the end here we do a data extraction, and then of course we write it to the category workbook, and then in the end we write the extracted data to the workbook. The OCR part, we can have a quick look, but it's not that interesting. I'm really just using the tesseract application. This is a bit tricky with all the quotes. Speak with entities. If you really want to change something, then make sure to double check whether all your quotes are set correctly. You see that the OCR is creating a new file. It's where we reuse the original file name, just add raw to it and save it as a text. We read this file and we will use it to categorize. So here I will go to categorize texts. I start by reading my API key, which is in this hidden column in the secret sheet. Next, I set a role description for my GPT, and then I create a prompt where I simply say, here's a document, here are some possible categories, now please tell me which is the most relevant category. And in the end, I make a call. You can see there's a separate function for the API call, because there are just some steps are repeated for the API call to categorize and the API call to for the data extraction. Now, once we've received the response, it's fairly tricky to then clean up the response and write it to Excel. In the categorization, it's not that bad because it's fairly simple, but later in the data extraction, you will see it does get a bit complicated and quite error prone as well. Let's have a look at how I clean up the category response. API returns a JSON, and I'm really just looking for the one word, which is the category of the file. So once you've done the categorization, here I will either create a new sheet where I can then later write all the extracted data, or I will use an existing sheet where I can append the extracted data. The idea here is to have one sheet for each category. Next, we are going to extract the data. Let's have a look at the extract function. We get the text, which is the document text category, which will allow us to find what elements we need to extract from the text. Here again, read the API key, read the extraction schema, build a prompt, and then make the API call. Once the API call is done, you will again have to clean up what the API call returns, but because it's more complicated and we didn't want to return a variable with a certain value, we really just want to print it to the Excel. That's why I've done it in a separate sub-procedure. Right, to category sheets. First off, this is the cleaning of the data, and then next is the actual writing of the data. This is still very similar to how I cleaned the category data. And then we go to parse and write. First off, I'm removing some annoying characters. And then this is where I start looping through the JSON that was returned. And the goal here is really to find the key value pairs in the JSON that was returned. There are basically two options. Either you have keys and value that are always surrounded by quotes, or you might have a list of keys and values, and then you would have the square brackets. So I'm looking for what is the first square bracket and what is the first quote. Based on whichever is first, I will make a decision to see it as a string value or see it as a list. And if it's a list, I will treat it slightly differently. So now I've explained what the code is supposed to do. So in the input folder, I have the same 4 files I had in my Python project. It includes a PDF, but it won't be handled. Output is empty for now. And then the other files we just discussed. So let's now run the process documents procedure. You will see it's generating a raw file, well, one raw file for each input file. This raw file contains the OCR data. This OCR data will then be used to perform the categorization and then later for the data extraction. Processing is complete. Now, I will admit it's not beautiful. If you go to the files, you have the list of files handled and then status. The only status now that I have programmed is the unknown file type. And you will see for each recognized file type, it will have created a new sheet. It found 2 invoices. It's got the invoice number, a date only for one, the amount and the vendor name. And then it got a bunch of line items which are not that cleanly presented, but they're just hard in a table to present this extra dimension. And the same is done for receipt. It found 1 received and it returned information.